In this session, we'll cover data types in Python. A data type is basically the type of data stored in a variable. This specifies the operation that can be performed on the data. Like we can't perform mathematical operation on the text, but we can on the numeric data. The data type ensures that the data is stored in the correct format so that a specific operation can be performed without any error. Python has several types of data types, but here in this video, we are going to discuss some important data types. So let's start with the string. A string is used to represent the textual data. If we store hello world in a variable, then hello world is a string data type as it contains a sequence of characters. For a string, we always use the quotation marks to let our interpreter know that we are using a string. Like here in this code, we are storing hello world with quotation marks. And due to the quotation marks, our data is stored as the type of a string. We can use single or double quotation marks with a string. We can also specify our string data type by using the str keyword. Str is a built-in function in Python that can convert any value into a string. Let's say I am creating a variable and storing the value 1 in it. If we display 1 is an integer with a numeric value. But here we can use the type function with the variable to find out the type of the data. You can see that the type is int, which is an integer, and we'll discuss this data type later in this video. But if we use str function with the data, now check the type, and here you can see that the type is str, which is a string. If we have a long text of a multi-lines, you can use a multi-line string. For the multi-line strings, you have to use triple quotation marks. I am creating a variable named multi-line string, and I am going to store a long text using the triple quotes. For example, this is a Python tutorial, and we are learning about strings. Let's print it now, and you can see that the code runs successfully. For the strings, we can also do a string slicing. String slicing is a technique that allows us to extract substrings. I am creating a variable a and storing hello world in it. For hello world, we can use string slicing. First, let's print the variable a. Now, on this variable, we can apply string slicing. We use square bracket, and within the square bracket, we add the starting and the ending characters. Let's say I want to extract characters from the 3rd to the 6th. I use the starting character as 2 because in programming, the counting always starts from 0. So here, the H is at 0. So the 3rd character, which is L, is at position 2. Now 2 is our starting position. Then we add the ending position, but we separate both starting and ending position with the colon sign. After the colon sign, here I am writing the ending point, which is 5. When I run the code, and you can see the output is LLO. We have just extracted 3 characters, which are LLO. If we omit our first position, it starts the extraction from the very beginning, and you can see the output. The same goes for the ending position. If we do not include the ending position, you can see the output, and it automatically considered our last character as the ending point. Python also offers a lot of built-in functions for the string, like uppercase. I am using upper function with our variable a. What the upper function does is that it converts all the characters from the lowercase to the uppercase. You can see the output. Another function is the lowercase, which converts all the characters to the lowercase. I'm using it with variable a, and you can see the output, which has converted the H to the lowercase. There is also a replace function, which replaces one character with the another. I'm using replace to change H to R. And you can see the output. It has replaced H with the R. But if we have a multiple H in the string, this function will only consider the first one. We also have a split function that splits our string text into the words. It creates the token of our strings. You can see the output. where it represents each word as a separate token. There are also a lot of other functions you can use. I recommend checking them out in the official Python documentation by searching Python string functions documentation on the Google. You will find the official Python web page with many interesting functions along with the code examples. Now let's talk about the int data type. An int is basically an integer, which is a whole number without any decimal point. These whole numbers can be positive or negative. I am creating a variable named x and I am storing a whole number in it, which could be any number without a decimal point. For example, I am storing 21 in x. So 21 is an integer data type. When we run this code, you can see the output. But let's check the type of x. We use the type function with x, and here you can see the output is int. We can also store the negative numbers like -50 in y. If we check the type of y, you can see it is still int. If we want to convert any data type into an integer, we can use the int function. The int function converts the data into an integer type. For example, in z, I'm storing 32 with quotation mark. So this is a string because we are using a quotation mark. We can show it using the type function. Now to convert the value of z into an integer, we can use the int function with the z. Let's print the type of z and you can see the output is int. Now let's talk about another data type, which is float. Floating point numbers are decimal numbers that include decimal points. Floating point number can be positive or negative. I'm creating a variable named f and storing a value of 2.21. 2.21 is a float data type because it contains a decimal point. Let's print it, and as expected, the output is 2.21. Now let's check the type. Using the type function with float, you can see the result is float. A float can also be a negative. Let's create a variable named f underscore n and store the value -33.33 in it. Let's check the type of the variable and you can see the type is float. Like integer, if we want to convert any data into a float, we can use the float function. I'm creating a variable named a and storing the value of a 5, which is an integer. Let's check the type, and here you can see that the data is in an integer form. Now let's add the float function to our variable. Let's check the type again, and you can see that the type is float. Let's print the variable a, and you can see that the float function has added a decimal point to the number 5. This is how the float function works. Python also has a complex data type which is used to create a complex numbers. This data type is more mathematical. Complex numbers contain a real and imaginary part. For the imaginary part, we use the letter J, and we always write imaginary numbers with J. Let's see this practically. I'm creating a variable named C and storing two values 4 and 5j. We can use the plus sign to separate the numbers. Here 5 is an imaginary number because it is written with j. Mathematically, real and imaginary numbers cannot be added together, so we separate them with the plus sign. Let's print them, and you can see the output is 4 plus 5j. Let's check their data type using the type function, and you can see the type is complex. Python also has functions real and image to extract the real and imaginary part. If we use the real function with our variable z, and you can see that it only prints 4 because it is the real number. If we use the image function with our variable z, and you can see that it only prints 5 because it is the imaginary number. There's also a complex function to convert any number into a complex data type. For the complex function, we have to provide both an imaginary and a real number. Let's create two variables. The first one is x, and we are storing the value 8 in it. The second one is y, and we store the value 7 in it. Until now, they both are integers. Now let's create a new variable named a and use the complex function providing two values x and y. Let's print it, and you can see that the output is 8 plus 7j. It has converted our string into a complex numbers. Now the last data type of today's video is bool data or boolean values. Bool values only include two expressions, true and false. They are used to evaluate expressions. Let's perform this practically. I am printing an expression. I am writing 5 is greater than 10. Our output is in the bool data because we are evaluating whether 5 is greater than 10 or not. It is not greater, so our output is false, which is in a bool type. Now let's change the greater than sign to the less than sign. The output is true, which is also a bool type. We evaluate our expression, and after evaluation we get the result in the bool type. So that's it for today's video, and if you found it helpful, do subscribe to our YouTube channel and share it with your friends. We have created a playlist for the Python, so check it out and watch our videos in a series.